Good day, everybody. Randy Franklin Smith here. We're talking about how to correlate tactical threat data feeds with all the other wonderful information from security logs that you've got in your SIEM, and to be able to do more intelligent monitoring. Today's webinar is made possible by LogRhythm, and LogRhythm does an awesome job of correlating, of doing exactly what we're talking about. Pulling in threat data feeds and correlating it with their already nicely normalized and categorized body of audit data. And with me from LogRhythm is Eric Ingleby. Eric, thanks for joining us today. We look forward to hearing from your thoughts, even during my webinar, as it pertains to what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks for having me as well. I look forward to this.
Okay, so here's a preview of key points. Of course, we're going to dive into, first of all, threat intelligence feeds, talk about what they are, who makes them, how they work, and then we're going to take an example feed. Now, the one I chose was Zeus Tracker. The Zeus botnet and malware kit is still alive and going, although it's been around for a few years, but it's a great feed to use as an example because it's in the public domain. Anybody can get it, and it's also a pretty mature feed as well. And we'll be able to use that as kind of a foil to talk about feeds in general. Then we'll look at, well, how can you correlate data from a feed like Zeus Tracker with the other event data that you've got in your SIEM. So threat intelligence feeds, first of all, what are they? Basically, they're a blacklist of IP addresses or domain names, and then to a smaller degree, URLs and file hashes that are known or suspected of being malicious. Now, folks, by the way, please use the question window to share any and all feedback. We definitely want your questions for me and for LogRhythm, but also any other points you got. Maybe they're not questions or just any kind of feedback at all. We want to hear it. I'll try to work it in as I go along. But Eric, what do you think about that as a basic definition of threat feeds?
It's perfect. You know, honestly, as we go through this, I think you'll see, like there's a whole bunch of different kinds of threat feeds, and I think you do a good job of pointing out that, the Zeus Tracker is just one of them. The threat feeds, though, really just each pinpoint on what like one type of threat or maybe two or three types of threats, but it's a good definition in general. Just some type of malicious feed that or actors out there even.
Yeah, Rob asked a good question here, which I see no reason why we shouldn't just tackle it now. He says, what's your view on the reliability of open source threat intelligence, which is like what we've got here with Zeus Tracker? I think a lot of that can be the best data out there. However, my sense is that the free threat feeds, the ones done by nonprofit groups and whatnot, tend to be pinpointed on a specific type of threat, like Zeus Tracker. All Zeus Tracker does, it's just a blacklist of bad guys specifically using that particular crimeware, and there's so many more out there besides just Zeus Tracker. And so I'm real interested in hearing if other people have different experience, but in the research that I've done and folks that I talk to that are using threat feeds, the open source tend to be numerous and very, very targeted. And I think a lot of companies out there are going to be interested in getting, more of an aggregate of not just Zeus Tracker and not just this botnet and that one, but everything. What about you, Eric? I know you've spent even more time than me looking at threat feeds.
Yeah, I think I think the open source ones, as well as maybe even some of the commercial ones, they all seem very pervasive to me in some manner. They're not all 100% accurate. If you see communication with this IP address or this actor. It doesn't mean it's 100% all the time, malicious in nature. So I think, and maybe, that's what spawned this webinar. I think, you need kind of multiple points of validation that there is something, suspicious or malicious going on. Because, take, for example, say some mom and pop dentist shop where their website, because they don't have the best security in the world, and it's just dad dentist running, the website may get compromised one day by a hacker, and he ends up on a threat feed, and who knows when he comes off of that at that point, right? So, but he realizes the mistake and fixes it, maybe even the same day. So, I don't want to be the guy that's just all-inclusively blocking every threat that I get from any feed, be it open source or closed source. I want a couple points of correlation or data, that I can make that judgment call on. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, if I just block it all-inclusively, I'm the guy that's got to go tell his boss that he blocked him from making his daughter's next dentist appointment potentially. Does that play into what you were looking for there?
Yeah, it does. There's always going to be false positives, and that's kind of what Rob was getting at. I kind of went off on a different tangent, maybe saying that I think open source is as reliable as a lot of the commercial ones, but they just tend to be a lot more targeted. I think that's almost the bigger issue with open source or the free feeds. Now, that being said, one thing we're going to look at, we're going to look at reliability and false positives in two different ways, Rob, so stay tuned. One is, for instance, Zeus Tracker, as a great example, has two levels of, really two different blacklists and two levels of data. One is, I know this IP address is absolutely bad, and then another threat list that's larger, but has entries on it that we're not as confident that it's bad, and you'll see why. You'll see exactly why that's the case, specifically in the case of Zeus Tracker. But then you can translate that to the same thing with a lot of other of the feeds out there. So stay tuned on that one. And let's see here. David says, one of the issues that we encounter with blocking IP addresses or ranges is that sometimes the IP address or range is from a service provider. We end up blocking legitimate content along with the bad. And that's what I was getting at. You'll see how the Zeus Tracker feed from the Swiss security blog handles that specifically. But the other thing here is we're going to talk about how do you use the threat feed, because the traditional way is to block users. But with getting this information into the SIEM, and especially the way Eric is going to show you, I think you'll like what you see, so just stay tuned on that. Okay, so the next thing, then who produces threat intelligence feed? You've got individual security researchers. Roman Hussey from the Swiss security blog is the guy that does Zeus Tracker. And then you've also got larger nonprofit entire organizations like SRI International, and then of course commercial infosec companies. And so there's a lot of threat feeds out there. Some are very targeted, some are very broad, some you pay for, some you don't. How do all of these different entities put the threat feeds together? So not all of this is public because it could be proprietary. So you've got an infosec company wanting to, of course, protect their crown jewels, but also some of it's not public because they don't want the bad guys to know how they're being detected and then take remedial actions against them. The classic arms race situation. But all that being said, there's honeypot networks out there that are just saying, hey, come hack me. And when they get hacked, they pay attention to where does the malware phone home to. So that's one way of building threat feeds. AV submissions, the bad guy, the AV operation centers that work 24/7 around the world, get in there and analyze the malware and determine how it figures out how to find its command and control servers. Forensic investigations from your high-end information security consulting firms that are called in to investigate breaches. Also, there is a lot of organizations that participate in email scans, so phishing attempts, and if you scan a lot of phishing emails, you'll be able to see, well, where do they link back to? Now, that may not necessarily be the actual command and control server, but it can be the drop zone point of where these phishing emails send you initially. So you see how these are all different ways to come up with this blacklist of IP addresses and domain names and so on. They also do some interesting stuff with what they call highly predictive blacklisting, and I'm not an expert on that, but they can take a lot of emails and from participating organizations and do analysis to isolate common link back addresses that once you push it through the algorithm, it's highly predictive that this is either just spam, which is bad enough, or it's the initial drop zone for a botnet or some other kind of malware to deploy. So they've got a variety of really effective ways of going about getting this data. Eric, feel free to jump in if you've got anything to add to this. If not, we can move on.
Yeah, I was just going to say I've seen some of the highly predictive blacklisting, and they do it in a variety of ways. One of the more popular ways that I've also seen is so if you're a participating organization in that predictive blacklisting, there's ways you can actually detect botnets they're sending spam inside of your environment. Yeah, one of them is you'll see batches of like emails coming in from a certain IP with the same name and same subject and the same attachment. That is, of course, either executable or maybe just embedded. But then you'll see like a batch of 100 come from one IP, a batch of 100 with the same attachment, subject, and all that other come from another IP, and you could just see it almost bouncing around a botnet. And then they can quickly share that information out, both what the attachment is and where the spam and other things are coming from. So they do have a number of methods that are pretty effective at identifying that. But like your description of it.
Yeah. Mitchell brings up two things that are getting hopefully popular, and one is Stix, and another one is Taxi. That's with two I's. These are collaborative, community-driven efforts to put together a standard language for expressing cyber threat information, and that's what Stix is, S-T-I-X, and Taxi is a transport mechanism for delivering that information. So, like Michael says, it sounds like maybe they're the holy grail, but of course, neither one of those pertain to collecting the information, but they do make it simpler for exchanging and publishing that information, very much like what has been done with, oh man, I just did a webinar on the standard for publishing vulnerabilities, the vulnerability language. So it's a lot like that. All right, so
I'm honestly starting to hear those words. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm starting to hear a lot about Stix and Taxi and the MITRE technologies, or whether it's the Mandy and Open IOCs, but they do sound like the way of one potential future. You always do run. The scariest part about a stick or a taxi, if I'm looking about integrating it into a SIEM or a firewall in the block, is the trust mechanism. So, yeah, when we're considering using, if considering using them in a SIEM or some kind of a blocking technology, they do sound very holy grailish. But you know, the trust mechanism, who made it, how are they verified, and all that other stuff does come into play as well. So just some other considerations. If those are technologies you're looking at, you know, just understand who you're getting it from. Maybe some apply to one industry vertical over another, you know, and maybe some aren't right for your environment. So just some thoughts for Michael out there.
Yeah, and I think Stix and Taxi will become a, you know, a de facto lingua franca for this, just like, and I remembered them now. Thanks, Mitchell. Yes, SCAP and OVAL. OVAL is what I was trying to remember, Open Vulnerability and Assessment Language. I mean, those have become standards. They've been very successful. So I would, you know, I'm thinking the same thing will happen here with Stix and Taxi, but it's the source of that data. You know, what is the recipe, the secret recipe for getting that stuff together? So, all right, now let's take an example threat feed. This is Zeus Tracker. So Zeus Tracker is about Zeus. Zeus is an older crimeware kit, still going strong though. It's created to allow you to do a DIY botnet for stealing passwords and lots of other stuff. You know, you get your botnet, you deploy your command and control servers, you do a custom build of the malware agent that's going to deploy onto the victim's computer, and then you set about spamming, phishing, and doing drive-by download attacks and so on to get people to install your nasty little agent on their system. So that's what Zeus is. Zeus Tracker is published free by the Swiss Security blog. The web address is abuse.ch, you see right there, and it's basically just a list of command and control servers for Zeus Tracker. Now, let's just understand a little bit about Zeus. There's three files or destination points on the internet that your agent or in the process of getting the agent deployed that your victim computers will be talking to. There's the config file. There's the actual binary. That is the agent that has to be pulled down and installed. And then there's what they call the drop zone. It's normally a page called gate.php. It doesn't have to be. That's just its default. And that's your actual command and control. So once the binary is deployed, once it pulls its configuration file, then it's going to start communicating with you, the guy running the botnet, through the drop zone. And that's where it connects via HTTP. It posts its messages to this file and then receives back instructions in the 200 OK response that that the botnet sends back. So this, you know, if you don't have specific technology for detecting Zeus, if you're watching these packets go back and forth, it looks like you're just communicating to an innocent web server over HTTP. You're posting messages to it, and then the way it communicates back is it sends the standard 200 OK message, but then there's additional data that's coming back in that. So that's how Zeus Tracker works. And so what we want to do is, if we see, here's the bottom line, folks, if we see any network connections on our network targeting a config file, a Zeus config file, a Zeus binary, or the Zeus drop zone, that's what we want to know about. And that's what the Zeus Tracker feed is intended to do. Would you like to actually look at it? Let's go. In fact, I already have the page up. Okay, so here's the actual threat feed. Now, well, published for you to look at on a web page. This is not the actual data that you download and use. But this is if you just want to go and do what we're doing right now and see it online. And what we're looking at is, when did this entry get added? What is the malware involved? What's the IP address and the DNS name if we've got one? And then we're going to come back and talk about this level information here. It's really important, whether it's level 2, level 4, or so on. If it's online, look how many are currently online. And this files online is telling us, out of those 3 files, remember those 3 files? They're back over here. The config file, the binary, and the drop zone. Okay, this is telling us for this particular DNS address, or well, for this host, how many files is it actually hosting? Because there's no requirement to host all 3 at the same place. And then that's kind of the most important information. Uptime, that's kind of interesting to see as well. So the SBL refers to whether or not it's published on another blacklist that Zeus Tracker cooperates with. Now, let's talk about the level here. Remember, I called that out, and it was either Mitchell or I think it was no, it was you, Eric. Remember, Eric, how you'd said this could just be an innocent victim whose website's been hijacked, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is what I like about what a Zeus Tracker does is they label these and say, all right, if we label it as level 1, this is a bulletproof, dedicated host. So this is a server that somebody put out there that is dedicated to being Zeus Tracker. And it's owned probably by the bad guy. Level 2 is a hacked web server, which is exactly what you were talking about, Eric. Level 3 is a free hosting service, which includes things like Dropbox. Sometimes either one of the binary or the config file of Zeus can be just hosted on a Dropbox or any other free file sharing website like that, because all it's doing is pulling that data down one time. The only one that has to be hosted on a web server, that can run dynamic code when you post to it is gate.php, or what they call the drop zone. So what's cool is they have produced 2 different versions of the Zeus Tracker file that one is just, I think, level 1, and the other one is level 1 and everything else. So for folks that are using this to actually actively block your end users from being able to go to certain websites on the internet, why then they may opt to only use level 1. Now, are you going to be giving up some security that way? Sure, quite possibly, but there's always the balance between false positives and breaking the user experience and so on. But that's an interesting way that they've actually acknowledged that in this particular threat feed, Eric.
Absolutely, and I think you'll see that we're going to do a little bit. We're going to do a little bit of that in the SIEM as well with our different risk ratings. If something comes in off of a threat list that's one of those lower levels, or even comes in as suspicious instead of 100% confirmed, doing fraud, and I'm giving away some of my other stuff. But I'm going to give a different risk associated with each of those levels, so I can maybe prioritize both what I'm going to go look at first, and then B, how concerned with the connection am I? Because in a large organization, as our guest previously brought up, the list can be quite pervasive. So in one day it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to track all of them down. So I want to prioritize them some way, and so I do like how they've done that on that side a lot.
And that is the power of leveraging threat intelligence data in your SIEM, because a SIEM like Eric's LogRhythm, can piece together lots of different indicators Whereas if you're just on your proxy blocking this blacklist, you're making a decision based upon one piece of information, one indicator. And so I think that's one of the most exciting things out of this webinar is leveraging your threat intelligence data in your SIEM as opposed to just using it at the gateway of your internet. Okay, so there's the detailed web page that I showed you. Would you like to actually see what the blacklist itself looks like bit for bit? We can do that too. Here it is. It's just a list of DNS names and IP addresses, and that's all it is. This is the bad domains list. It excludes hijacked sites, so that's the important thing there. And we have to use domains in this case because, remember, one IP address can host many, many different websites. So that's why you see the data in this particular format. Pia asks, how often is the Zeus list updated? Man, it's I think it's updated very, very frequently. I think within minutes. But he doesn't publish exactly how he gathers that information. I know a lot of it is through submission. But remember, Zeus Tracker is just one list. You're only covering, with this particular list, it's a great list. It's extremely high quality data. But remember, you're only covering one little type of bad guy software and one particular brand of botnet with this particular list. And so what you have then is an automated process that goes out there, pulls this list down on a frequent basis, and then integrates it with whatever technology you're using, whether it's your gateway or your SIEM or whatever. Now, they also have this, which is interesting. These are the actual URLs. And this is valuable, especially in the case of hijacked websites, because 99% of the content on the website is safe, with the exception of these specific URLs. So why not just always use that? Well, you don't always have access to the URL, depending on what data you're comparing this against. Okay, but that's what an actual threat feed looks like. And the next question then arises, what can we do with that data? Well, traditionally, we just went to our firewall or our proxy server and said, okay, go and download this threat feed on a regular basis, and then don't let anybody travel to those web addresses. And that's the problem. We're basing our allow deny on one little piece of data, and if we limit it to only those command and control servers that we know are absolutely dedicated to just being a botnet malicious command and control server, then we're going to be missing all these other places that the bad guys hide their data, whether it be in free file sharing sites or hijacked websites and so on. But then if we go with, well, block this IP address, we could be blocking 1,000 different websites, and most of them, all of them being perfectly safe, except for the 3 files embedded in this one particular website at that address. So that's why I think it's so cool to pull this information into your SIEM, because then you can search the IP addresses, the domain names, and the URLs that are surfaced in your security logs and compare them against these blacklisted values. But at that point, you can then choose what to do. Do we alert at that point, or do we go further and get more corroboration? And that's where you're going to be interested in getting into the conversation just a little bit, I think, Eric. True?
Absolutely, and yeah, I have a couple of good examples I think I can show you, and hopefully get some people some ideas on what to do with the corroborated evidence.
So Rob says, so URLs are more targeted. Should they be used in preference to domain names if available? And I would say yes, absolutely. If you can, if depending on what data you're looking at, what source data on your network from your hosts and so on, if you can do it from the URL, then absolutely. With a lot of, but not all of these threat feeds provide you with URLs. Again, Zeus Tracker is. I wish they covered a lot more than what they do, but they're great in terms of publishing exactly what their information means and what level of confidence you should assign to it. They're more than just a list of IP addresses. And that reminds me, in fact, there's a great blog by my colleague Anton Chuvakin out there. I might include it in the follow-up email, but it's about evaluating, how do you choose your threat feeds? And he has a great list of evaluation criteria, and then for the evaluation for each criterion, he says how hard is it to actually evaluate this, and how valuable is it in terms of defining the quality of the threat feed. So if we're going to actually try to do this and correlate threat feed data against our logs, then what kind of events are we talking about? Well, obviously, if you've got events coming from your proxy server, from your firewall, particularly on outbound connections, and by the way, most of this that we're talking about today are threat feeds that would pertain more to your outbound connections than incoming. Now, but of interest to me is what kind of events in the Windows security log could we correlate threat feed data to? I mean, it's a no-brainer that you do it with feeds, from logs from your proxy server or your firewall. But what about your Windows security log? Well, for one thing, if we turn on auditing of our Windows firewall on servers and workstations, we can compare threat feeds to our outgoing connection attempts, and that would specifically be the destination address in those events. Or with incoming attempts, this is less likely to be something that you would detect, because most of what we're dealing with today are botnets where an agent's been installed, an APT's been installed on the on one of your clients, and it's phoning out, on one of your endpoints, I should say, and it's phoning home to command and control server. There's less of the other direction where somebody on the internet is actively trying to break into your network through an incoming connection. I mean, we've gotten pretty good at blocking that today. And I'm going to show you some examples of those events. The other type of Windows security event that you could link to, because maybe you've got a different type of threat feed that is not about target command and control servers, but it is actually known bad guy actors out there that are probing your network. In that case, yeah, you definitely want to compare the source address on logon attempt events in your Windows security log to that kind of threat feed. So here's an example.
There also, Randy, I don't know.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to walk over you. I apologize. I was going to say there are also some potentially out there that you could utilize for just program execution within the Windows security logs. They list out known malware, for example, that say like SCBH host executing out of something other than the Windows 32 directory. There's lists out there that you can compile and potentially use the Windows security logs to also look for those types of threats as well.
that would be absolutely useful because we could correlate against event ID 4688, I think is the number, which is logged whenever a new process starts up. And so if there are specific paths that are known to be malicious, that would be just as easy as falling off a log to correlate that. If the bad guy's a little more sophisticated and is renaming his executable on every single deployment, why then that would invalidate that attempt. But there is no single method that's going to detect everything. So the more of them that you can do, the better. So yeah, that's a great example. Okay, so here's event ID 5156. This is what the firewall logs whenever it allows a connection, either inbound or outbound. Of course, in this situation, we're looking at an outbound connection. This is just a boring one because it's an outbound DNS query. So it's DNS.exe outbounding on port 53 to talk to another DNS server out there. But this could just as well be, port 80 connecting to one of those command and control servers on the Zeus tracker list. And what we would want to be correlating on, first of all, filter on this event, 5156, direction outbound, and then look at the destination address. You see, there is no URL there. Somebody had asked that before. There's no URL, there's no DNS name, it's just the IP address. But we could correlate that against the bad IPs in our list, and we would suddenly know, hey, this Windows computer is contacting a known bad Zeus command and control server. Or maybe it's the IP address of a hijacked website. So in that case, we're not sure. This may or may not be a botnet client trying to phone home to command and control. So what else could we correlate that against? And that's what you're going to see Eric show you examples of. This is a logon event. So this isn't necessarily for a compromised client on our network reaching out to a command and control server. This would be more the opposite, classic hacker, somebody on the internet probing our defenses or one of our servers and seeing what he can connect to. And so in that case, we'd be looking at 4624, where the source network address is a known bad IP address. And if you did find something like that, that would be a big deal, because this isn't you reaching out to a potentially bad site. This is a potentially bad IP address or known bad IP address reaching out and taking the initiative to contact you. So at this point, you've seen this IP address or domain name in a log that you've collected in your SIEM. What's next? Well, part of it is what feed are we looking at? What kind of feed is this? Is it a command and control feed or what? That's one thing that we want to know right away. Which feed did this data come from, and what kind of stuff is on that feed? But the other thing is, wouldn't it be nice if we could go to that system in question and get more information about it? For instance, have there been any new executables started on that server that we've never seen before? Or are there file integrity events, new files showing up, new EXEs or DLLs that have been modified, that sort of thing? Now that's what we're getting at in terms of multiple witnesses giving you corroboration that this ain't a false positive. There's something really bad going on here. And that's really what I would call the Holy Grail, and you're going to see that here in just a little bit. But what the bottom line comes down to is that IP addresses show up in all kinds of events. So how can you correlate to all of them? It really helps if your log management SIEM solution knows what an IP address is, no matter what type of event it comes from. And that's something you get with the normalization that LogRhythm in particular does. How do you automatically and frequently update your rules with the latest data from your chosen feeds? That's something that some SIEM solutions provide, some don't yet. How do you reduce your false positives? And that's what we're getting at in the previous slide with multi-dimensional corroboration, of which Eric is going to show you some examples. And then what differentiates threat feeds? And so I encourage you to look at that blog by Anton Jivakin, which I'll find the link and send that to you. But Ralph asks, is there a list of public feeds with reviews or even a list of recommended ones? As mentioned, there's an explosion in the number, just trying to get a good starting point, the reliability with them and so on. So I have not found something like that, Ralph, because that's definitely something I was looking for in my research leading up to this webinar. But hey, we got over 200 people signed on live to this. So if there is something out there like that, someone's going to let us know, and please do, and we'll share that information. It would be nice, Eric, wouldn't it, to have like a consumer reports guide to threat feeds?
It really would. I know we've taken. I know we incorporate some of the open source feeds out there. There's a number of them, and we do some commercial sources as well. Now we've done a pretty careful eval on the commercial sources we're incorporating, but really our customer base is kind of the input for which open source feeds that we support. So I could always provide Randy, which open source feeds we consume afterwards. And they're just requests based on popularity on our customer base. So you might take some merit out of the fact that these bubbled up to the top of LogRhythm's list to incorporate. But really, I think we could. We're gonna have to start up a side business after this call and do consumer reports on threat feeds.
Exactly, but that's good though. That is what you could provide there, since it's based upon customer demand. That could be useful to everybody else. I like that. Speaking of which, I think this is your slide, and these are some of the folks that you pull threat feed data from, right?
That's correct. So these are some of the commercial sources we decided to go with, and again, we'll likely include some more coming in the near future. And again, take a look at the open source feeds we get. But since we did just incorporate these guys, I thought I'd throw some logos up on the screen here. But even more importantly, if you don't mind just skipping to the next slide, I could talk to why we decided to include these and. Large table here.
People are going to love this table. Go take your time and go through it.
Yeah. So basically, we didn't want to have like 50 of the same kind of threat providers inside of LogRhythm, and we kind of balanced out the open source feeds as well. But for the commercial sources, each one of these are very unique in how they gather their threat intelligence, and I'm not really going to advocate one over the other. We don't even OEM any one of these. We just take the feed if you happen to have them. I know most people just throw them on their firewall or proxy, but if you want to throw them into a SIEM and get this corroborated evidence, this is a good way to start. But anyway, let's start going down the list. So CrowdStrike is a very, very popular one. I know some former CrowdStrike employees, as well as people that work there now, and even those that leave, still advocate for this one. They really go after target like nation-state activity. So they have like code names for like. China, for example, I believe is known as Red Panda, and there's a couple other ones. And state-sponsored crime, they provide all kinds of data types, like you see on the far side there, email addresses, file names, again, and that might be useful to, especially somebody like Randy who can name off every Windows event ID, off the top of his head, if he can quickly go and find files that they're publishing that are known to be malicious. But a very great source for nation states, and just depending on what you're looking for, this is the kind of data they provide. Norse is new, and I really like their Dark Viking. I know them very personally. They're great. What they're doing though is something totally different than CrowdStrike or anybody else on here. They have monitoring of like tons of honeypots throughout the world, as well as internet backbone points. they're looking for known bad actors and known phishing attempts, and they're doing it from such a pervasive visibility standpoint. They try and filter out all the noise and give you just the bad actors that are trying for phishing, bad hosting sites, and that you may or may not want to block from your firewall. Then I'll bet there's more than one person that's familiar with Symantec and their Deep Insight product here. They have more endpoints around the world than any other organization that I can think of. They're providing threat intel through malware distribution, just collecting data off their endpoints for phishing, spam, fraud, and they're a great source for IP and URLs. Again, that feed is very, very pervasive, though. They're amazing, the intelligence you can get out of Symantec. And then let's go down to ThreatStream. So ThreatStream is an interesting new company. I met them for the very first time at Black Hat, and really where their forte is taking those open source threat intelligence services that Randy's really been covering, like the Zeus tracker, the Tor network entrance and exit points, and they're basically like a filtering service. They try and validate that these what the open source feeds are producing there, so you kind of get a sanitized version with a greater sense of confidence in what they're outputting in both IP addresses, bad actors, spamming service, and things of that nature. And then my good friends at Webroot, they have their Bright Cloud service. They're really emphasizing malware, phishing, and spam, and there's a number of products they already integrate with, but with LogRhythm we're incorporating some IP addresses and URLs, and there's tons of good information you can really glean out of any one of these services. And I just wanted to show you that, like I mentioned to Randy, there's more than one type of threat feed out there, not just URLs and IP addresses and blacklists. So do know your audience. If you're a government, you may may look forward to something like the CrowdStrike that's specifically targeting all of that stuff. And then if you're more interested in the commercial sector, and maybe spam is your worst enemy, maybe something like the Bright Cloud service is more your speed. Again, to each his own, and just do your research, figure out which is best set for your environment, and maybe which one you should pitch to your boss for the next incoming SIEM meeting. But as for that, I'll stop talking on the cloud. Randy, any comments or questions coming in out there that I can answer?
Yeah, Mitchell says, are there feeds tailored for vertical markets like banking, intel relevant for their organization's business?
I think there are some popping up there. I don't have it off the top of my head. I'll have to do a little more research on that. I do know that there are but it almost goes back to the sticks comment, and that there's Verizon publishes their Verus, which is but it is more along the lines of something industry vertical directed, but I don't know if there's specific threat providers out there, at least not that LogRhythm's incorporating at this point. Although again, this is probably one of our first passes at this, so if you do find industry verticals that we need to get into, or you'd like to see some more information on, please let us know, and we'll do some research there. So Randy, maybe you can confirm if you can see the LogRhythm dashboard here. Excellent.
Yep, you're 5 by 5.
I'm going to go over to the alarms here and kind of dig around and see what we can find. So I have a couple of things going on in this environment, and as I mentioned when Randy was going through the slides, you might notice that. So I just went over to my alarms, and I have different colors here indicating different severities of my network's looking pretty beat up today, intentionally so. So I have a number of things going on, but in order to keep on target, I may just look for some of the threat information that that we've been talking about here, and see what kind of rules have been pinging off. All right, so it looks like, and I may start start in reverse order. Normally I'd go from my highest risk down, but I just want to give you guys a sense of what you can do with this threat feed from as little as a risk of 72 up to a 99. And what I'm looking at here, it seems, is this actually feeds back into my comment with Randy. It's a communication with the threat feed, but it came off the suspicious list. So I'm not really sure if I want to block it yet. I just quite frankly want some more information on what's going on there. So I might drill down into that and then wait for the data to come back here real shortly. But again, if I go back and look at some of my other threats here, I might actually come up with higher level ones, and we'll look at that in a second. But let's keep along the lines of this this investigation here. And as this loads, you'll notice that it pulled back all the relevant data that had to do with that, and it looks like at the number of outbound connections, and I can see why it could potentially be on the suspicious list as I kind of giggle here. It looks like it's a mail server in Russia, which definitely raises my eyebrow, as I am not accustomed to my employees reaching out to Russia to use mail. So I can of course bring up the logs, and ironically enough, I even looked. So this identity inference over here that was clicked by default is actually inferring who's actually doing the work there. So the log doesn't actually contain information on who or what is surfing there, because it's if we go over to the raw log here, and Randy will probably attest to, it looks like a Windows event log, or this one might even be this one is a LogRhythm one. I lied, but the connection, the firewall connection, doesn't tell you the user that's there. So this identity inference is telling me that Miss Caitlin here logged on less than 2 minutes ago. So it's likely her that's providing this. And again, I can look at what application she's using. It looks like she's using Internet Explorer and Chrome, and indeed going to some Russian mail site, which is interesting to me. So again, I don't have any reason to at this point, call for false alarm. But what I might do is go back here to my alarms tab, and on this alarm, I've preset this because it's suspicious to come up with one of these smart responses. And what this one is programmed to do is, I'm going to actually add this smart. If I hit approve here, I'll add this to a new list within LogRhythm, and this is where we're going to get into the multi-dimensional section, and add it to a list in LogRhythm I called the watch list. So I have something suspicious going on. I don't want to really spend a lot of time here. It's a risk of 72, but if I add it to my watch list and I continue to see communication to this guy, I should hopefully get a higher priority alarm that will tell me to come back and maybe pay closer attention to what's going on here, because there might be something suspicious. So I'm going to go ahead, approve, and it's queued, and it should fire off, and I should get a success momentarily. And there we go. It's going to start, and hopefully go through and be successful here. There we go. We got the success finally. So just one of the ways you can use a couple. Yeah, please.
I just want to call out a couple things here. That this is the power of getting the threat data into your SIEM, because then, okay, this pops up. Something's communicating with something on my threat feed, but what else can I find out? Oh, okay, we can infer who it is. What's the user inside our network? Oh no, she doesn't. She's not in sales. She's not talking to any customers in Russia or anything like that. And what's running on her computer too? This is how we're able to. This is a good example of multi-dimensional analysis where we can corroborate whether this looks suspicious or not with other data that you can only get in your SIEM.
Yeah, thank you. And I might, so I'm going to assume all of these, because I've been ignoring my LogRhythm deployment while on this, while on the webinar. But I'm going to assume for the moment that all of these are likely the same type of event. So I'm going to move on to another, another point of information and look for other threats that are coming through my network. And then it looks like I have another one here. So I got suspicious down there, and I got fraud up here. So as LogRhythm moves over to, I may not have clicked it, I apologize. So I'm going to go look at these fraud threat feeds here. Hopefully. Sorry about the slow connection here.
That's okay. It always happens. Software knows when you're demoing it to other people. Software knows.
I know, right? The demo gods are not with me today. Any day now. Wow. Okay. Let's try and just clear it out and come back. All right. But of course not. It always happens like this. I agree, Randy. So I really will. Finally got down there. So I wanted to find that fraud one. I might not filter just because of the delay here. Suspicious, and it's not going to be that nice to me. Here we go. So I should get the fraud one up. And you notice on the fraud ones, I don't actually have one of these smart responses in there. The reason being is, you know, I'm much more concerned about threat feed information that's coming in from actual, that's no longer suspicious, that they've confirmed that these sites are known for fraudulent activity. So I didn't put a smart response on there to do anything, but just allow me to look at the information. And as I drill down into this one, I might get rid of this for the moment and see what kind of information pops up on my dashboard. And it looks like I got a couple outbound connections. And let's see what else. I have an impacted host here. I don't have a lot of data going out on this one, but it is interesting to me that LogRhythm has resolved. So normally with these logs, and I'm sure I can go through there, you just get the IP address, but LogRhythm went and resolved the name of the host that ended up sending this, and it looks like it's, you can't make this stuff up. We love servers at ioflood.com. So I think this is my Norse threat feed. I think Norse actually published something on this this network, something to deal with Bitcoin mining. I'm sure I could find it if I looked it up. But I'm going to look at the logs and see what's going on here. And again, I'm looking around, and I can go ahead and click on the log. And actually, this is kind of alarming because now I can see that I'm also inferring that Caitlin is doing this, or something on Caitlin's computer is still doing this, and it's a bit more concerning to me. So I definitely want to continue my investigation down this road. Looks like Internet Explorer went there, so I might actually go back. I'm getting a couple points of correlation here, and see what else is going on over, and see if I can find anything else that's going on with Miss Caitlin's computer there. And I'm going to clear out and just look at, actually I'm going to pull up any other threats that's going on.
Or you could drill down into all activity either for her identity or her endpoint too, right?
Absolutely. I could actually, if I go back to one of those logs, I could go back and since the logs here, LogRhythm actually makes it easy. I just click there and investigate her. And while that's going on, I can continue on my investigation in the alarm rules, and it's going to find everything she's been up to. But I also have a couple other alarms over here that looks like interesting. So this specific alarm here, this is a multi-dimensional alarm that's pretty high on my threat list. It's over, it's almost 100. So one of the highest threats I can have. And if I go back in my list here, I'll bet I can find out why, because I think it's this rule right here, what it's doing, and you don't have to be an expert on the SIEM to know this. Our rules are fairly easy to set up. What it's doing is it's looking for abnormal process activity. So new process, I'll bet it's this one here. I'll bet this one's Caitlin. So it took the threat feed, LogRhythm took the threat feed, realized, and I might also drill down on one of these, realized that there was communication with a known threat feed, and then it's telling me with this other that there was a new process found, and I'm going to hopefully go back to the process one. Let's see. New process. I don't think it was on a POS. So one of these processes, and these are older alarms, I'm trying to figure out which one just recently went off, but one of the new processes on one of these systems here called into, and actually I can look at the log, I'll just go look at the logs that generated the multi-correlated alarm here. So what happened was there was going to be, and actually I'll just leave that up since I'm going to tell you, that alarm only goes off when there is a new process found on a system that is known to be communicating with one of the identified threat actors in the world. So this is, here you go here. So communication with the threat list IP for fraud, and then there's a new process. Caitlin's in HR, which makes sense. I'll bet this is her as well. No inferred identity there. Apologies, but I can go dig down in that one further. So something from a fraud threat list hit one of our HR systems, and then it continued to ping it up until we got this system compromised by known threat actor, because there's a new process that's spawning and then continuing to talk to one of the threat actors there. So multiple points of correlation that I definitely want to investigate further, and I highly suspect that Caitlin's computer is likely compromised here. And I believe I even have another smart response when I got that corroborated event that's available that will allow me to use something like our Cisco ICE integration that will just isolate it on the network altogether. But I'm not seeing it right now. Demo.
But that corresponds. That corresponds to what Mitchell was saying, is now make it actionable, scripting remediation action if it makes it to the fraud level.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we can do that with a number of devices. And I was trying to find one here, but in lieu of that, so like Cisco ICE is known for its ability to isolate. We're not even blocking it at the firewall, so we're not going to prevent any other users or anything like that. Cisco ICE will just isolate them on like a VLAN on a new network, or I think Forescout, our Forescout integration will do that as well. And these are all just built-in smart responses. So I could really attach these to any one of the alarms, but now this one in particular was worrisome to me, so I wanted to make sure to have that ready to go if I saw, a corroborated event. One of my machines is talking to a known threat actor, and then I get something like a new process spawned on there, and that is really a cool thing that SIEMs can do for you, and it doesn't even have to be LogRhythm. I think LogRhythm helps you out, because not everybody knows every single process, for example, that's running on their web server or their HR system, and it may take them a very, very long time to go figure that out and whitelist all of those processes from day-to-day activity. LogRhythm will go learn those for you and make it a bit easier on the end user, and then once you've learned all those processes, we say that's the standard to go forward, alert if there's a new process on here, and that's what we did today. We alerted to a new process that wasn't known to be occurring on that system before, immediately following a connection with a known threat actor. The power of the SIEM, yeah.
Yeah, and the multi-dimensional, multiple witnesses are always better than a single eyewitness.
Exactly. Former military guy, and I used to watch SIEMs 24 hours a day for them, and my biggest fear as a SIEM operator, and I think any IT person could likely relate, do I pick up the phone in the middle of the night to wake the colonel up, because I know if I'm wrong, Uh,
Gotcha.
I'm not gonna have. I'm gonna be cleaning some of the trains. It's not gonna be a good day tomorrow. So, it always helps. You know, this is giving you a confidence level where you can pick up that phone and with reasonable, confidence, say, it's time to get in here and I need authorization to block some of this stuff. And that's really what we're trying to get here. Quick mean time to detect, validate that, and then respond just as effectively and quickly. I mean, and in some organizations, can you only imagine if like Target or Home Depot, for example, had actually whitelisted all the processes, and we could do LogRhythm does users, it does network connections. If they knew all the processes running on their POS system, or I think with Target, it was one of their SCADA systems. I could be wrong. Please correct me if you know I'm wrong.
No, it was POS, but
it was.
And it was even saying, hey, there's a program running here we don't recognize.
Yeah,
but they weren't.
But
they weren't bubbling that up to their SIM. They were expecting
and
somebody to go
probably
there.
So.
Yeah.
Sorry, as we talk over each other, it was probably just so buried so deep, because there was nothing saying, "Hey, this is new. This is a brand new process, and it's important. Look at me." And that's what we get with our risk rating and other things like that. And, the power to detect it and actually take action on it in seconds is pretty awesome.
I got a question here for you from Derek. He says, "I notice you're looking at LogRhythm in a web browser. We currently have LogRhythm, and I'm only aware of a .NET client that requires a local install. Is the browser-based thing an add-on for LogRhythm?"
No. So you're probably used to seeing something like this. This is the normal client that you're seeing, or these are the .NET client. You can. I'm opting to use either or. Some power users still use the fat client here, but you can go as long as you're running version 6.2 or above. Feel free to go to the LogRhythm support portal. You can download the web client install. It is recommended you put it on its own independent box, but that view is 100% free. You can go and install it anytime, or you can call support and get some help with that. But yeah, there's going to be some great new additions to the web client in the very near future too. So if you don't have it, highly encourage you to pick it up. There's going to be cases here very, very soon. We're going to add. So one of the things we're missing right now, we have some case here, as you see, open, closed, and you can add comments. And if I scroll down, you'll see the comments, but full case. And now I'm just getting into pitching product, totally getting offline. But there'll be some great additions coming in the very near future as well. Just go and download it.
And I've seen a picture of people using the web client on their iPad too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, tablet friendly as well as cell phone friendly. Right now, the recommended browser is Chrome. We'll come up with some more browsers in the very near future, but yeah, you can use it on your iPad. I've used it on my Android tablet. It's very friendly, especially if you are that analyst that needs the ability to, and you can launch those smart responses that I did quickly from the tablet too. So if you get that alert, that email sent to you or the text message, you just open up your tablet and hit launch the smart response, and then yeah, I'm getting some interesting stuff today. And then everything cleans itself up as long as you set that up prior.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there we can take today?
Yeah, keep sending us your questions. For banking in particular, some people talked about verticals. There's like the financial services ISAC.
Yeah.
And they, it's an information sharing thing. And related to that is this whole Avalanche project. Where I love their tagline. I think it says an incident for one person is a defense for everyone else if you're sharing the information. And this is going to be a really cool project that ties into exactly what we're talking about for getting reliable, very, very fast, up-to-date real-time threat feed data where if you're compromised, you share information about that compromise in a inattributable way, but through a trusted forum, and everyone else finds out about it in real time and can proceed to protect themselves. So it's pretty cool stuff that's coming along. That's called Avalanche.
Yeah, I've actually, I think I've read some of that, and there definitely is a need and a want out there for sharing information across. Yeah, and it's almost the same as the sticks and taxi, sharing that kind of threat information quickly and efficiently, and by verticals. I know, for example, at LogRhythm, we're producing some vertical specific knowledge bases, but we haven't gone to the public side yet to make it too open source. Like we have a retail cybercrime. I think we even talked about it with Randy before, and we're doing some interesting stuff. PCI does take you so far, but for the retail industry specific, sometimes you can get a bit more in depth, especially with a SIEM product, and endpoint monitoring, whether you're authorizing which users log into a POS system, how many transactions go out today. Heck, you can even with our behavioral analytics, you can look at how fast transactions are happening on a system, and recognize potentially when transactions are happening faster than an average user could even input it. That's just one vertical, and I'm sure you'll see some more verticals being hit up by LogRhythm as you're going out. We're doing a lot with threat feeds right now. I mean, and there's no stopping you from even coming up with your own threat intelligence. If you're in a vertical, you might go ahead, if you do have LogRhythm, or heck, if you don't have a SIEM, if you want to do a vertical specific threat intelligence, you might consider putting up a honeypot. They've been popular for years. Matter of fact, we've got a lot of interest in honeypots because when you start talking about honeypots and them being very specific for your environment, because you can concentrate a honeypot on your IP addresses, the applications you use, and then learn about the attacks the targeted attackers are using in that, and take it and then defend against it in your network. One of the most difficult things to do is, once you've built that honeypot, how do you give a guy a full-time job to analyze that information, take it, and then, but once you have that information, what do you do with it? Do you share it with an industry, or maybe do you import it to your SIEM? Because wouldn't it be cool if you had a honeypot that's specific to, say, healthcare industry? Everything has an IP address these days. It doesn't matter if it's your blood pressure cuff or the EKG machine you're connected to. There's likely some type of communication you can whitelist in the backside of that, and you can look for deviations in either flow or not, lack thereof, right? So if you had a honeypot developing for that same network, it could be a lot of work to go ahead and maintain that. So why not just dump the information from your honeypot into a SIEM and correlate across that? If I see this actor or this set of credentials hitting my honeypot, they're actual credentials for my CISO. Perhaps I understand now that my CISO's credentials are compromised, and I can take action within my real network and have my SIEM notify me of that, or something along that line. So just some thoughts around vertical specific threat intel gathering and how you might share it.
What is some of the other information that you can integrate or use? Because so we looked at security logs and we looked at threat feeds, but I know that's not all that you can pull in and correlate.
No, yeah, we're very interested in endpoint, like identity analytics and network analytics as well. So we can take the information from multiple sources, or we can generate it ourselves. So if you look at our endpoint, it can monitor users, network activity. It can monitor USB devices, inserting, exporting. It can monitor file integrity stuff, file integrity monitoring. In our 6.3, we have registry monitoring, so you can go and I'm really excited for that addition. We'll have the ability to look at inserts into the registry, so you can quickly see if malware is being inserted. You can baseline with our analytics what should be in the registry, and if something gets inserted there, especially in the startup sequence. Yeah, and we generate that endpoint forensics there, and then we also have a network forensics product, and we can also interface with other network forensics products, whether it's NetWitness or Snort for an IDS, IPS. That data is also very valuable inside of the SIEM product, where you can correlate the data that's going on those types of endpoints, as well as what's on the network. So our network monitor, you can look at layer 7 data there, so you can understand not only the flow of traffic that you would get with like a net flow, but you can take it up to, oh, this is communication on port 80, but it's actually not HTTP traffic, it's netcat listener. Our network monitor would identify that type of spoofing for you, and it even goes to the point of trying to identify even HTTPS type activity and what type of activity that is, and we do that by looking at the certificate of that encryption, so we can potentially identify even secured communications in some instances, and identify the application that's using that. So if you're getting secure communication over port 80 or any port, maybe even taking that back to the endpoint where you can identify that stuff.
Jeremy, and I also know, by the way, you can get Active Directory data in there too, which can be really useful. To look at like what is somebody's job title or what department are they in. That identity data is cool.
I forgot about that, and we'll sync that up. We sync that inside a LogRhythm, and so you can. It makes making roles for organizations incredibly easy. So you can say this group of Active Directory users is authorized by their group and to do X, Y, and Z, whether that's access HR servers or access POS systems or access healthcare systems, whatever it is, and then that way you don't have to maintain two separate lists, of credentials. If they're removed from the Active Directory group, then they're removed from that alarm set in LogRhythm, and likewise. So.
Jeremy has a question. He says, how is all the information correlated? Is there an agent necessary on all the endpoints, or using WMI or some other protocol?
Yeah, so we can do we can collect a number of different ways. So if it's from a Linux device, we can put an agent on the Linux device and collect from a flat file. We can have that Linux device syslog data to us from an agent. If you're talking Windows, we don't use WMI. We use Windows native RPC call to go over and remote collect. You can also have an agent on the device. It really just depends on what level. The security level and the security model of your company, it depends on what you want to get out of that. I guess you should. I guess I would say, look at some security models, because some companies are okay with remote collecting logs, and the natural progression, as I've seen, the first step in security or meeting some compliance is collect logs from critical servers. But then eventually, and I think Randy got into this last time in the last webinar we did, eventually that organization matures, and they want to have a firewall in place, and they want to have an IDS, and they want to start collecting from that. And then they take the next step even after that. Do you want to go to the endpoints? Well, the first step on the endpoints is to start collecting logs, but there's a lot more data on that endpoints, and there's a lot of companies out there that are really focused on that. If you're a Black Hat or RSA this year, and hopefully you don't overlook LogRhythm if you ever go looking down this road, but because our agent endpoint technology is phenomenal in my opinion. But there's a lot of investment in endpoint analytics these days.
And the thing that I want to say about agents is that a good SIEM is never going to force you to use an agent just to get logs, and that's true with LogRhythm. But the other thing is there's always information that you can only get with an agent. And so if you want that information, you've got to put an agent on that system. And so you want a SIEM that has an agent that can do that and is easy to deploy and manage and doesn't kill the endpoint.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. It's just depending on what you want to do, how much information you want to glean from that endpoint. If you just want the logs, because that's where you are in that security, maturity model, you just want logs, that's fine. That's you can do it all remotely. If you do want further, and I haven't wiggled my mouse long enough, sorry. If you want more forensic data, whether that's that user activity monitoring, what they're doing, when they're doing it, file integrity monitoring, you can get a little bit of each from logs within Windows and some of that with Linux. But if you want the granularity of like an endpoint forensics technology, you'll likely want an agent on there just because they're more able to gather that additional info.
Michael would like more information about your integration with Cisco ICE. Now he's asking, how do you correlate information obtained from ICE? Now, what I thought you were referring to is you sending instructions to ICE to isolate this user, this compromised endpoint.
Yeah. Why not both?
Yeah,
that was what I was talking about. Yes.
Oh, okay. So can you pull information from ICE?
Yeah, we can collect logs from ICE. I think it's an API integration. And I can get more information on that if he really wants. But yeah, it's an API integration. We can get information from them, and then we can also send them instructions in order to quickly protect our network, whether that's, again, moving a device onto an unused subnet, maybe disabling a device, kicking it off the network. Yeah, anything. Any of those interesting things you see with you can do with Cisco ICE. Hopefully, we're integrated with it. Yeah, you can definitely get more information. Yeah, hopefully I can grab his contact info and I can
have that
stuff. Perfect.
Ralph says just to add, several security products are needed to accomplish security presence, but that results in agent fatigue. He says, I'm sure several in the audience are experiencing this. So yeah, I mean, I definitely hear what you're saying, Ralph, and that's why I think these endpoint security solutions that integrate, like 8 different technologies into a single agent and a single pane of glass are so important. But then for the really advanced endpoint security stuff, beyond malware and whitelisting and stuff like that, if you want the latest and greatest technology of your top point players, then you're always going to end up with more than one security agent on a system in this day and age, but on the systems that really matter to you. And yeah, it gets to be a pain to manage all those agents. But that is, on the other hand, the value of security companies working together, and you're seeing it here with like two-way integration between LogRhythm and ICE, and I'm seeing that with a lot more security solutions out there, where if you already have a pretty pervasive presence of a given agent, if you can have two-way integration between it and other security technologies, why then that is one way to reduce agent sprawl.
Yeah. And I see and hear that a lot, actually, in my line of work. I'm sure it's not a surprise to anybody. But yeah, and honestly, I think it's up to every security professional just to go look and see what he needs at the endpoint, and see if there's a need to add an additional agent, or if there is a single technology that can do it. And honestly, there's no right answer. I don't think so. And so that's why LogRhythm is. My founder always says, we'll just collect it. It doesn't matter who we're coming from. Our goal is just to collect it so we can give you the information, whether it's you're going with LogRhythm's technology or somebody else. Yeah, so hopefully you don't get two agent fatigued. If you have an endpoint agent and you want to collect the logs with LogRhythm, just point them to LogRhythm and we'll collect it and start doing the analytics for you. So again, at the end of the day, it's the right call by the security analytics or the security analysts at the other end. So,
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, the right way to do it is choose your endpoint security solution, and then what these endpoint security solutions need to do. And I've been telling the one that sponsors a lot of my webinars is they need to build um, log collection and security data surfacing into their endpoint. They're the one that already has a presence, and they're the one that people are definitely going to put on endpoints. Why not work with SIEM vendors to say, what data would you like to be able to get from us? Because we've already got the bits running on that system. But that's kind of pie in the sky.
Yeah.
But it's, that's the way to go. The other thing to go with is if you don't want to put a SIEM agent on a system, is to really look at Windows event forwarding, and that's an area I've already done one webinar on it. I've got another one scheduled this year, but Microsoft has actually done a fantastic job with Windows event forwarding, and the bits are already there on all your Windows endpoints. And for you, Eric, I mean, no skin off your back, right? You're getting the events.
Yeah. Actually, I personally written up a white paper on how to use Windows Event Forwarding with LogRhythm. It makes a ton of sense in a lot of cases where, especially if you want to get logs from endpoints, one of the craziest things to do is track endpoints, especially if it's a laptop that may go home at night, come back in the morning, have a different IP address, and trying to make sure to keep, because then the burden's on the SIEM to figure out who that is, where they're going. But yeah, you can 100% set up Microsoft Event Log Forwarding there, and then we just parse out the name, and it almost makes it easy. And I'm sure my sales guys would would be telling me no, sell more endpoint stuff. But no, I absolutely love the Windows Event Log Forwarding, especially if you just throw it over there and you just want the correlation. Throw it over to a central box and definitely just have your SIEM pick it up, because yeah, they have done a pretty good job at that. And then you don't have to worry about, there's one central collection point. Makes it kind of nice, especially for administrators out there.
It's all centrally manageable via group policy, and you can even filter which events are sent. So if you've got 10,000 endpoints, you can tell it only send these events that are most important. I've even got a scenario coming up where you can send, and we should do a webinar on this, is how to track the laptop that goes home or goes on a business trip. There's different ways to actually do that. I've even set up Windows Event Forwarding. That's not to say you couldn't do a better job with your agent, Eric, but I've set up Windows Event Forwarding to send events over the internet. So I still know what's happening on my endpoint, even when it's, who knows where.
Hey, I'm all about giving people options. I think we should do one on that. There's no reason why I just want the event at the end of the day, just so I can have better analytics. Yeah.
Let's see here. Kevin wants your white paper on Windows Event Log Forwarding. He says we use LogRhythm and we're on that right now.
Oh. Excellent.
David
I'll grab
says,
your information.
Yeah. David said, so we'll get that to you, Kevin. David says, when considering gathering endpoint logs, how does LogRhythm handle the sheer volume of data? 5,000 endpoints can send a tremendous amount of log data. I just want to throw in there before you take that on, Eric, that's one of the things I love about Windows Event Forwarding. If you know which events to send, we would like to have every event from every endpoint, but if that's not possible, we can send 5% of the events and get 80% of the value if you just know which events to send, and that is possible with Windows Event Forwarding.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add from a LogRhythm perspective, 5,000 agent is a drop in the pond. Yeah, honestly, the connections is the thing we worry about the most. But I will say that we have retail stores out there that are doing a bit more than that. So let's just go with that. We handle agent distribution very well. It just depends on what you're looking for. But 5,000 agents, I would say I wouldn't blink an eye at it.
Cool. All right, well, we are at the bottom of the hour. Thanks a lot, everybody, for your time, your questions. Eric, thanks for making this possible and showing us some of the scenarios where you can integrate this valuable threat feed data against all the other information that you've got in a good SIEM like LogRhythm.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks for the time, Randy. I appreciate you helping me out today. It was wonderful working with you again.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day, everybody. We'll be sending you links to that white paper and other stuff in the follow-up. Take care.